Welcome, Christian Metal Community. We're here again for another great interview. Today we have Matt Sassano. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, man, you would be one of the very first to kind of nail that upon, the first
Uh,
time. So I congratulate you. This is
well,
awesome. I am glad
I'm
to be
glad I
here.
did because I've definitely messed up some in the past. So
I
that's
know, me
awesome.
too, even more so.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're
man, I remember on tour, very many times. I've been introduced as just every variation, just every variation. They'd be like, "Who's heard of Matt Sassano or Matt Sasquatch?" And then every other, it's like,
Whoa.
"Oh my gosh, man, they butchered it, but I'm
oh,
still
that's
gonna
fun.
do the show." So thank you
There
guys
you
so
go.
much for having me.
Absolutely. So you're based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
a rock and roll. Okay. So we always like to start off. Tell us. So did you grow up in a religious home? Would be the first question.
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in a religious home. I was a pastor's son in a little cow town called Canisteo, New York. Nobody's probably ever heard of Canisteo, New York, but if you Google it, you might come up with something. There's like 3,000 people there, if that. And so I was the
Wow.
pastor's son in a very fishbowl of a town. I got to learn a lot about my faith and all the things that kind of motivate me here in my music. But and I love the church life. I grew up with a sister, and my family was just in the small town. Um, One of the things that kind of quickly shaped who I am as kind of not only a musician but a person was the fact that I grew up with two disabilities. I have cerebral palsy and I have another disability called dyscalculia.
Oh
And
wow.
on top of the church life of just like learning my faith, a large part of my story is kind of navigating through my faith a lot of times because although I grew up in church, my dad was a pastor and all that, there was a lot of like hidden abuse behind the scenes and a lot of like family dysfunction that took
Hmm.
place, from as early as I can remember. And
Yeah.
so, I try a lot of my music and a lot of the things that I kind of grew up grappling with was trying to reason what was fake and what was real in my faith. And I think that that's like the number one thing that kind of informs my music today.
Well, that's so relatable. Going through church hurt and things. So many people. Uh, sadly, they don't come out the other end like victorious. What I mean is, a lot of people turn atheists, and so
Right.
I
Right.
feel like you going through that really would help you to solidify your faith and all right because you've been through the trials and you're like, okay, this is what I believe.
Yeah, like not to say that it wasn't like a tough road. Like I definitely
Sure.
went through and like had my resentments and had a lot of like questions and all that, but like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like I never kind of like threw the baby out with the bathwater. I knew that I
Right.
kind of had a hard time trusting church authority a lot of times, or, I would see things behind the scenes that would just kind of make you shake your head. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was always this constant conquest to try to figure out who God was. I always believed like the Bible. I always kind of believed like the tenets of the faith, but I
Right.
looked
Right. Right.
around me and I was like, man, there's just got to be something a little bit more real. And so it's kind of set me up on a conquest to, create the most real and raw type of music that doesn't really have anything off limits. I
For
talk
sure.
about everything from disability to grappling with your faith to, we just did a song called Violated. And it's talking about human trafficking and sexual abuse. And so we
Hmm.
hit some really hard topics that maybe, Jeremy Camp's not going to do, but we have our own kind of we have
I
our
ain't heard that
own
name in a
kind of
long
lane.
time.
I know.
Yeah, yeah, you're not going to hear Chris Tomlin hit on this stuff, but I think we're creating a pretty awesome lane. And I just founded a movement called The Defiant. It's an exclusive Facebook group for anybody who really has overcome any type of odds. Maybe you're overcoming an addiction, maybe
Yeah.
you're grappling with a disability, or some form of abuse. We've even got human trafficking survivors in the group. It's
Wow.
kind of a mix of Christian and non-Christian people, but that's the thing I love about doing this music is it's kind of a bridge for people that
Right.
might not be 100% always in the faith to kind of talk to me and get to know a group that's there to support them. And so it's really cool. Y'all should join the Defiant. It's just brand
Sure.
new, a couple months old.
Absolutely. Yeah. Share it with us, and we will. So the next question that we like to kind of get out there for everybody too is, were you raised in a musical home?
Yeah, so I never really thought that I would sing. Like I grew up, my mom played the piano on the worship team, and she was just really heavily influential in the musical side of things. Just growing up every single Sunday, seeing her on the piano, and so I got to the point when I was like 19 years old. Like I said, I had struggled with a lot of disabilities, and so I'd never really had anything that made me stand out. I always wanted to be that guy that would like have things about him that weren't just, oh yeah, there's that kid with like the disability. So that's when I decided, like, I think I need to learn bass, bass guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that kind of began my musical journey. I played bass on the youth worship team and was always the most radical on the youth worship team. Like you'd have a lot of people that would usher in the church, and they'd be doing their thing. I'd come in with my like blue hair and earring,
Yeah. Yeah.
just facial piercings everywhere. So I kind of just didn't fit, and I always had this like desire to do more rock oriented music. And so that was kind of the start of it. Around 2010, I had kind of established my first band called Transparent Soul, or Transparent. And Transparent was kind of just like the small town band in this little weird town. One of the weird things that happened through that experience is that one of our first songs we ever wrote was like featured on a NASCAR video game. And
Oh
so
wow.
we were like this tiny little micro band, and I had a friend that had connections there. So we had like this crazy amount of exposure for such a small band. I don't even think we had a YouTube channel at the time. Um, but like it wasn't my intention to really even sing. Like I clammed up whenever you even mentioned me on a stage singing. What had happened was when I started to form my first band, Transparent, I quickly found out what a lot of musicians know is that the band life is hard to keep together. And so every other week, I'd draft a singer. It was my intent to write the songs and play the bass. But then that singer would drop out, and I'd be like, right back to square one. So then I'd draft another singer, and then they would drop out. It wasn't until I was at this church thing, and I know this is kind of a long story, so hang in with me there.
All good.
But it wasn't until I was at this church, this lady came up to me. She didn't know anything about me. I just started going to this church like maybe 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks prior, and
Okay.
she said, in the middle of the sermon, she just stopped and she was like, "Hey, man, I feel like God really wants me to tell you something. Can you come up here?" And I was clamming up. I was nervous. I was like, "What's going on?" And she said, "God wants to use you in music." And I was all for that. I was like, use me in music. That's all cool and everything. And then she said, "He wants you to sing." And that's when my heart sank, and I just like my whole world crumbled down. I was like, Did you just say that right?" And she said, "Yeah, God wants you to sing." And that began my journey from very timid bass player to just growing in the role of a front man. And so it was a very
Yeah.
line upon line type of thing.
That's awesome.
It was
Wow.
crazy, man. I still can't believe it.
Well, word. Well, let's talk about your latest band and just what made you decide to start it, and then also what are some of your musical influences?
Yeah, man. So like I've gone through so many different iterations of different bands and stuff like that. And around 2018, 2019, decided to kind of throw it all away and go solo. So
Mm-hmm.
I just have
Mm-hmm.
had, I love bands. I respect bands,
Right.
but like the sheer idea that you can keep five people together and creatively agree on stuff and like you're on the road and schedule conflicts. So around 2018 I kind of found myself in this place where I began to shift, and I
Okay.
started just doing track based music. And I,
Hmm.
that kind of opened doors for me, even though it's kind of like breaking the first rule of rock and roll with having, a live band and just everything kind of being organic. It was kind of my way of being like, I feel like God was saying, if you want something done, you just do it yourself. And so
Yeah.
So
through
did
the
you
whole
create all the music too then?
So
The
I
tracks?
record
Did
with,
you?
yeah, I write all the songs, and then Josiah Prince from Disciple
Yeah.
kind of helps produce it. And so, like, I've gone into studio with him. We're currently working on stuff. But really, it was just this weird thing where I just broke the rules of rock, and I just went out with tracks and a smoke blower and tried to, like, basically make up for the energy of five people on a stage with just one person. And
Wow.
so that kind of opened doors for me. I had gone on tour with Seventh Day Slumber. We had kind of networked with them. Joe heard my
Mhm.
story and was like, "Hey, man, let's take you on tour." And then just continuous doors started opening with me, just me and a laptop, and just getting on stage, doing my thing. And now I'm getting to the point where we are starting to kind of start to build a band. I'm auditioning right now a drummer and a guitar
Oh,
player, and so we're kind of
Nice.
growing out of that. But it just goes to show, like, I think a lot of people that have a dream or have a something that they want to do always feel like they have to have all the pieces put together in order to do anything. And I think that, like, that was God's way of just saying, man, you got to get comfortable with yourself first. And if you do this, like, let's just go out with tracks and don't worry about the band. The band will come. Goes back to that whole thing of, like, you build it, they will come. And I'm just,
Yeah.
like, mind blown of all the opportunities that have opened. Like, I've gotten to serve as support on Petra's 50th anniversary tour and
nice.
open for
I saw
them.
that show. That was they're not the one with you, but I did see it. Actually, I wish you were there. The two opening acts I saw were not good, but I did see Petra did a they did a really good show. Really good show. I saw that in the Atlanta one.
Oh wow! Thank God I wasn't in Atlanta, because I wouldn't have liked that rating. The two openers were just kind of awful. I'd have been like, man, but
No, you would have done it justice.
Right,
oh,
right.
thank you. Yeah, those guys are awesome, man. It's just
Oh,
so
well,
it's
sure.
so awesome to just be able to kind of meet those guys, because even just growing up in a church home, like, their Petra Praise album was one of the first cassette tapes I ever got.
Oh
And
wow.
so just to I had a guy in my church that knew Bob Hartman. Little did I know that.
Yeah.
It was just kind of one of those funny things that happened where my like he made the connection, and my folks came home one day. They were like, "Man, we got some good news." And I was thinking, Chinese food for dinner, something good. And they were like, "No, dude, you got the invite to open for Petra." So just my mind was completely
That's
blown,
insane.
and
Yeah.
it's just grown from there, man.
Right.
We're just really excited about what's to come.
Yeah. And Jay asked. He said, "What's some of your musical influences?"
Absolutely, man. So I think there's just been a variety. I'm kind of a product of all sorts of different music. I would think,
Yeah.
like, in this genre, the bands that have influenced me most were, like, that Breaking Benjamin style. Um, Skillet was, like, huge, because back when I kind of just didn't know what I wanted to do, I was failing through a digital media class, because, as you can see, as you know, I'm really bad at technology. I could barely sign onto this
Uh,
onto
you
this. So
got
I
it,
was
man. You got it.
I was failing through a DMA class, and that weekend we had gone into a festival called Kingdom Bound, and I saw
Oh yeah.
Skillet, and their first set, they got up there were lights and people freaking out, and I just, for some reason, I just had this idea of, like, hey, I think this is something I kind of want to dabble in. Like, I want to
Yeah.
start my first band. And so that was kind of Skillet's set in about 2009 or 10
Hmm.
was
Okay.
kind of like the catalyst for me just being like, I think I want to do something similar. So Breaking Benjamin, Skillet, I'm even inspired by
Right.
some of the new rock that's coming out. Like Falling in Reverse is really
Yeah.
awesome,
Oh,
and
that's it. They're real good.
also some of the classics, Petra and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So have you gotten to play with Skillet yet?
Not yet, man. That's one on my bucket list. I've met so many people because we've done festivals like Uprise. I've met Matt from Spoken. I've played with 7 Day Slumber and Petra. But the number one, I think, on the bucket list is to eventually
Yeah.
open for Skillet. I don't know,
Yeah.
man. We'll cross our fingers. We'll call it
Uh,
here. Maybe one day we'll look back at this podcast and see it happen.
that's
So,
right, man.
come
I
on,
love.
John. Let's do this.
That's right. Let's get it,
I've
John.
opened for I've opened for his favorite band. He says his favorite band is Petra, so it only makes
Yeah.
sense. Come on, man.
There,
There we
that's
go.
there's the connection, man.
Yeah. What's
I'll,
up? I want to say something about Petra real quick, just because like so many of us, Petra was definitely the gateway drug to Christian rock.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
The, you know,
yeah, absolutely.
for lack of a better term, This Means War was my first um, CD for sure.
Oh wow, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
I
Yeah.
heard that song a lot on the tour, and just to think that those guys are in their 70s, later
and,
70s, just
and
still
still
doing
rocking.
it, is just an amazing thing. And like I got to meet them and kind of like you know, you grow up and you're like thinking that these guys are just like they're the biggest legends, but like backstage they're just like talkative, and I'm
Yeah.
playing card games with Bob Hartman's son
Oh
backstage,
man,
hanging out, and
that's so
yeah, and
cool.
so it just felt like weird
Yeah.
because I'm just as much like a fan of all that music as I am a participant, so it almost felt like a dream where you're just kind of like backstage playing cards, hanging out. Bob Hartman's laughing in the corner about something that they're small talking about in there. And yeah, so it was just a really crazy experience. And it just felt like, I don't know if I belong here, but I mean, obviously, cool.
Yeah,
I'll take
I
it.
I've actually got Petra. This Means War on a double cassette. I don't remember where I
Oh
got
wow.
that.
Oh,
I thought that
dude.
was kind of unique. I don't know how many of those they made, but so you mentioned Matt from Spoken. Matt Bard is one of my favorite people. He is so
Yeah.
awesome, man. Did you get to play with Spoken?
I haven't played with him yet, but we've done Uprise together, and so I
Oh,
was at my
nice.
merch
Okay.
table, and
Yeah, yeah,
apparently he heard of me, so he just came over and like just
yeah.
started striking up conversations. And
Oh,
I
he's
have a
so
little,
cool. Yeah.
I have a little Chihuahua named Wiley that we brought in at Uprise, and we were just kind of hanging out, and I guess he was a Chihuahua fan, and so we were just chatting about dogs and Chihuahuas and music, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's weird, you
He
know what I mean? Because like I said, a lot of these bands that I'd grow up listening to them on certain things, or like I don't know if you guys remember like TVU or Radio U.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I still listen to radio you on occasion.
yeah, that was kind of my gateway into this scene, and so like I would see music videos on a loop all day of people that I've now met, which is like really amazing. And yeah, it's just like one of those things that's super surreal.
What was that, well, Jay? What was that older video? Still
Z Rock.
something.
Z Rock. Remember that?
Z Rock. That was one of them. But there was another one called Still Something. They played the harder stuff. I can't. They're so. I can't remember
Oh
all of
Oh
them. But
man, those were the days, man. Remember the
yeah,
10 Most Wanted and everything like that from Radio U
yeah.
and
We're
TVU?
gonna be setting up an interview with Matt from Spoken eventually. We're working on it. They
yes.
actually Spoken holds the record for me for the band that I've seen the most times. So I've
Oh
seen
wow, how
Spoken
many times is that?
uh, at least 20.
Oh wow.
Dang, dude.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you
and
have
I
a
think
favorite
Disciple would
song?
be second at around 15.
Oh, dude, those guys are awesome,
Yeah.
man. I love them. I've seen them. I don't think it's been excessive with Disciple, but like every single time I have seen them, it's been about 3 or 4 times. They
Nice.
just never quit. Like I remember, like the first Disciple concert that I went to. I think Kevin was sick. He was feeling under the
Oh,
weather,
wow.
and he was just like, I don't know. You could clearly see it. He was pale. He wasn't feeling good.
Yeah,
He just
yeah,
didn't like. He didn't care, man. He was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm going for it, and that just really like inspired me. Like, dude,
Sure.
this guy is a champion.
Yeah.
And so like getting to work with those guys, I've not met Kevin as much as I have like Josiah, but all
Yeah.
those guys are just
So,
amazing. Just
Right.
awesome
Right.
to see
Right.
them do their thing.
so what has it been like working with Josiah?
Dang, man, it's been awesome, man. I mean, it's super cool because he's just always full of just different ideas and how to bring the vision to life. I kind of came to him because the old producer that I was working with, kind of we had some schedule conflicts, and I'm like, where to go next? What
Mm.
do I do?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just so happened to see one year. I don't, if you guys are familiar with the Grizzly Awards,
Oh yeah.
but that he had won Producer of the Year, and so I was like, I
Uh-huh.
wonder if I could just get with him. We called him up, and it just kind of happened, and he's kind of been the producer behind everything from my In Defiance all the way up to my current work,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
it's it's interesting just being able to write with him and get to know him on like that
I
kind of a
mean,
level too.
you find something that works, stick with it, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, and like I said, like he just brought the production up to like a whole different level, and he's just funny to work with too. He's one of those guys that I don't know, you're in the middle of like an intense writing session, and he'll turn to you and be like, "No pressure, but all we need
yeah,
is the perfect progression that says the perfect thing at the perfect time in the
but no,
perfect way." And he's
but
like,
no
just no
pressure.
pressure, And so I'm like, man. And he just always keeps you on your toes. He's taught me a lot about just visceral songwriting and just like painting the picture. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Sometimes when as a writer, you go for like the most easy way to say something, or it like it's relatable but it doesn't paint a picture. He's really taught me a
Mhm.
lot about how to balance like the relatable language in your song with like visceral imagery that I don't know. It's just
Oh
all these
wow.
writing hacks
Wow.
and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
so
Well,
it's been cool.
we've interviewed a few other people that
Yeah.
definitely sung his praises as a
True.
producer.
True.
So
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
really? Oh,
Production.
dude, yeah, yeah. He's just super cool, and like I said, it's like at his house. His studio is kind of at his house, and him and his wife own like a garden, so I'll be out there talking plants with the wife. Like my
yeah.
stepdad's really into like
Mhm.
gardening and planting and all that stuff. So you get to see
Oh
him.
wow.
He's got he's got all his
So
dogs there. He's got a
is he
husky. And
kind of local to you?
it's about 4 hours away, so
Oh, okay.
it's a little
Gotcha.
bit of a haul, but like totally
Yeah.
worth it if you want to,
Sure.
Yeah.
you know, have all your
I
stuff
understand.
turn out
I mean,
well.
when you're a touring musician, 4 hours is nothing, right?
Now this is
Exactly,
true.
dude. Yeah, like I remember, like
This
when I
is
went on
this is
tour with
very
Seventh
true.
Day Slumber, it was literally like I love it. They never quit. Like Seventh Day Slumber is
yeah.
one of those bands that never quits, and so like being on the road with them for 2 months, you would get up, you would do your thing. Um, you get up, set up, like get to meet everybody, do the show.
Yeah.
You're like tired, you're drenched in sweat, shower, eat, go to bed, and then drive to a completely different state like the next day and do it all over
They've been
again.
doing
But
that. They've been doing that
yeah,
for a long time. I saw them probably close to 20 years ago when I saw them.
yeah, they're
They've been doing
they're
it a long time.
absolute maniacs, and it was actually Josiah that told me about that. Like he was like, I was like, who do you think I would be a good fit touring with? I've been working with you for a while, and he actually told me like, if you can tour with Joe and everybody from Seventh Day Slumber, you can do it with anyone. So like, let's start there, and
Wow.
then that kind of opened up a whole door.
There you go.
He's like, if you
That's so good.
Yeah, he's like, if you can do it with them, dude, nothing's going to be a challenge after that. And so we had gone on
Mm.
4 consecutive, like, nationwide tours. We had hit a bunch of churches, recovery groups. I even got introduced to, like, the prison system. So we'd go into, like, maximum security prisons and, like, do shows
Yeah.
for the
Wow.
inmates and everything. And so
Oh
we hit,
wow.
like,
Interesting.
everything, bro. It was
Was that
crazy.
I think I heard of that
like a
before.
full electric show
Well,
or
a
an
lot of it
acoustic show?
was a lot of it was stripped down. Some of it was like more stripped down. Like they don't allow you to bring lights and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
Right.
like Joe and everybody had their sound system and everything, and I would just kind of hook up with them. And like I said, I was kind of an easy on, easy off because I just went with track. But it was cool, man. Like I've gotten to hear a lot of and just the stories that you hear from that. There's some people will, they're excited because they're going to be getting out to see their family in a month, so they're doing the big countdown. And then you go in this corner and you hear a story about a guy that he's never getting out, and it's like, man, this is crazy. I
Wow.
had one guy that came up to me, big burly dude, kind of looked like Terry Crews from you know who Terry Crews is by chance?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Big
Yeah.
old
Uh huh.
muscular dude, and he came up to me
Yeah.
with tears in his eyes, and he was like, "Man, I'm really ashamed of my past. I've killed people." And I was like, "Oh my God!" He's like, "But
Mm.
what you said
Wow.
up there really touched my life and like made me think about it, and I want to get closer to Christ now and everything." And so just like there was that jarring statement of like I killed people, but then he followed it up with like what you said up there really touched my life and made me realize that I need God, which was really cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it was a crazy time. So right now we're just kind of, I've been in studio with Josiah, um, in December and everything. We're working on two brand new songs, and so I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah. So when it comes to songwriting structure, all the technical questions. Yeah. But when it comes to songwriting structure, what comes first, like lyrics or music?
Okay, for me, man, like a lot of times, it's a title. Like it's a title that'll grab me out of nowhere, like a title and an idea. So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like not my name or something. I knew that I wanted something to talk about disabilities and like how a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times our labels feel like our name when we go through disabilities, when we have an
Yeah.
addiction. And so it's that title. And then basically what I kind of do is I'll take, like, I know this is kind of cheating a little bit maybe, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
take a track from a band that I already like. I'll write my melody to their song.
Yeah.
And then basically, how like YouTube instrumentals and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you can get an instrumental of a song that you like and then just basically write a melody around that instrumental to give you a vibe. And then basically I'll take it to Josiah and be like, hey man, how do we make it not Papa Roach? How do we not make it Linkin Park? And then, basically when your melody's fresh, and I don't have a band to rehearse with, basically I get like a fresh melody and then we just change the music so we're not stealing from anybody.
Right. That's an idea. I'll have to try that.
Yeah, I
Somebody.
mean, when it's just it works a lot better when you just don't have a band to rely on, or your band members are sick, or COVID hits, and you still want to write. But yeah, dude, I just encourage anybody to try that approach. It's really cool.
So Matt, I know you've been very open about the things that you struggle with, and I think that's very relatable to people. And I know you said you have a form of cerebral palsy, and I'm pretty familiar with that because I work with kids with varying types of cerebral palsy. When I was in college, I worked at a summer camp for
Yeah.
several years, so it was all different kinds. Now, the other thing that you were talking about that you deal with, what was that called again?
So it's dyscalculia. So that's
Just
the less common one, and I wasn't diagnosed with that until I was about 19 years old. So that
so
was
tell everybody what that is because I've never heard of it.
so dyscalculia is basically like a mathematical disability. It
Mm.
also has to do with like your spatial relations. So for instance, I get lost like super easily. Like I can't navigate. I also can't drive because of it, because
Oh
like,
wow!
yeah. And so like it definitely affected me, very much so growing up, just getting lost everywhere. Like I'd work certain jobs and they would literally think that I was like just taking detours to
Right, right, right.
mess around, but like I literally, it's like it's literally like I can't read maps, I can't
So
understand like
so
grid, like,
you, so
yeah,
being a UPS driver is not in your future.
definitely not in the cards. I used to be a FedEx truck loader. I could load the trucks, I just can't drive the trucks because somebody will get killed. But but yeah, like it has to do with a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of like your navigation, your place in space, like your mathematics. Like I was, just failed through pretty much every metric in school as far as the math stuff, but I was always like really good in writing and all the other verbal
Yeah.
stuff. And so,
Nice.
yeah, something about it just kind of like, I guess the way I like to describe it, dyscalculia, is like whenever I get in a car with somebody, because my mind wipes out directions, it's almost as if you're getting kidnapped. Like every single time you get in a car, no matter how much you know about a specific
Wow.
area or like stuff like that, my mind just doesn't calculate directions in the slightest. And so I have to have like complete trust in the driver that they're not going to like, drive me to the woods and hack me up or something. Like, I don't know. There's that
Oh
panic
wow!
that sinks in because you don't know your surroundings. It's almost like being lost permanently in life.
That
Wow.
is interesting.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I luckily I grew up in a small town. I could take walks in the town because I would memorize like how the town layout was by muscle memory. But like, if it was something just vaguely unfamiliar, even within my own town, like I would freak out. And so, yeah, definitely posed some challenges. I was always like late for class, but I didn't know that I had a disability up until I was
Right.
19. And that, like, I knew about the cerebral palsy, but I just didn't know anything about the disability that I had dyscalculia wise until I was like 19. So I went through life like just so many questions, like what is going
Yeah.
on with me? Why? What
Yeah.
is this?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been one of those things, but and even to this day, I'm just very heavily reliant on like transportation and like having people
Right.
drive me around. Like my stepfather Steve, he's really good about like getting me where I need to go on the tours and stuff.
Oh wow,
And
that's a
so yeah,
blessing.
yeah. So like where I kind of lack, like I have a very supportive family that has kind of helped me and all that.
That's really
So
cool.
it's
Sure.
been good.
Nice.
You know what? So it's been snowing here. You're up north, right? You're in like
No,
Matt.
Well, I am I'm originally from up north, but now I'm down in the deep south,
So you're
Knoxville,
in Tennessee,
Tennessee.
Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay, yeah. So you know what? Do you know Travis? Wyrick? Isn't
Yeah,
Travis
dude,
from?
he produced my first, like, remember how I mentioned
oh,
I was in previous bands and everything?
yeah, yeah.
So he was the first, like I was in a band called Transparent Soul when I first moved down here, and he was the producer of that particular thing. Like he
Oh no
produced, you know
way.
Travis?
Well,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
interviewed him. We interviewed him. Yeah, he's a really good dude. I love his music. He's worked with so many bands.
yep.
Have you ever listened to his solo stuff? His industrial metal album?
I have not listened to his solo stuff, but like that was kind of my start into the rock scene down here, and so like,
Okay.
how
Well, thank you so much, y'all. Go check
yo,
out Matt Sassano
That's right.
everywhere that music is sold, and listen to the Spotify. Let's help him out.
Hmm.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This has been great.